It's the question everybody wants to know the answer to. What are the Giants going to do if these young players like Luis Matos, Heliot Ramos, and Marco Luciano continue to play well when guys like Michael Conforto, Austin Slater, and Nick Ahmed are ready to return from injuries?
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase lockedonmlb for a first deposit match up to $100. And coming up on today's show, it is a mailbag edition of the show as the Giants were off yesterday, and I keep talking about maybe linking up with Sully from Locked On MLB. It hasn't happened yet, but thank you to everyone who submitted questions, I should say, for this edition of the show. So, like Pratik, KD, Jake, Brolik, and Steven all asked different variations of the same question. The one that I'll read out loud here is from Pratik, who says, have you seen enough to support trading some veteran outfielders to keep Matos/Ramos from being sent down to AAA? Perhaps trade Conforto's expiring contract for some /a minor league prospect behind Matos and Ramos, since Conforto's stock rose from his early season performance. I'm going to read through some of the others because there's slight differences. KD says, what do you think happens when all the injured guys come back? Will Murphy, so he's talking about the catcher position, continue to be backup catcher, and what would happen to Casali? Where do Conforto and Slater fit in? Any chance Luciano, Ramos, or Matos go back to AAA? The Jake basically asked the same question about trading Conforto or Slater, and Brolik talks about where does Conforto fit in, and then Steven says Nick Ahmed versus Marco Luciano. And so, yeah, all variations of the same question, and I basically answered this on the last mailbag edition of the show, but, you know, I like that's why we started with Pratik's question, because the question was, have you seen enough to support trading some veteran outfielders? And I've moved closer to yes. I mean, based on the strength, just the pure impact that some of these guys have made, specifically Luis Matos. I think that I'm less sold, not that I can't be sold, but I'm less sold on Heliot Ramos and Marco Luciano. Luciano has literally played in 4 games, and so that is, when we're talking small samples, that is the small sample of small samples. Heliot Ramos has played in 11 games and, you know, is rocking a .407 batting average on balls in play, which is unsustainably high. Luciano's is .444. And so you look at stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, it's not, you know, we're still looking at too small of a sample to make like sweeping assessments. But with Matos, the thing that stands out to me is he's put up numbers that are about 75% above major league average offensively. He hasn't walked yet. We're talking 8 games, so we are talking very small samples with all of these guys, but he's done it, and he's only struck out 3% of the time, whereas, you know, Ramos has struck out about 30% of the time. Marco Luciano, you like to see this, only 21.4% of the time, but again, it's 14 plate appearances, so he could go out there, strike out 4 times tonight, and then you're looking over 30% probably. But for Matos, 3.3% strikeout rate, Last year, it was just 13%. So the dude has no problem making contact, putting the ball in play. And what we're seeing is power out of Matos. A 633 slugging, a 300 isolated power. And also, I like to factor in projection systems, and kind of across the board, projection systems view Matos now as average or better offensively. And when you see that from an inexperienced 22-year-old with projection systems, that gets me excited, because they don't just make that assessment lightly to say this is an above average major league hitter when there's not a lot of track record, and when they're so young. I mean, and so yeah, and with Luciano and Ramos, it's not quite there yet, although it's trending upwards. And so I guess my answer is that I haven't seen enough out of Ramos or Luciano to warrant trading away guys, like especially Conforto. I think Slater, at the very least, you could probably fill that spot with somebody else, but only because he really hasn't done well this year. But again, that I don't read too much into that. But the problem is, how do you justify to your fans sending down an Heliot Ramos for a struggling Austin Slater? Like, it's hard to justify. But the thing is, if you do so, you buy yourself time, and Slater could continue to get opportunities. And if he struggles, at some point you make an evaluation, and if Ramos just keeps tearing it up in AAA or whatever, you're like, okay, so, if Slater was ready to come back and they felt forced to make a move, I don't think you force a trade there. I would try to find a way to keep Ramos on the roster. He has been playing every day. It's not like he's been a part-time player, whereas Slater is a part-time player. And so it's more like when Conforto comes back, one of the questions was, how does Conforto fit in? And right now he doesn't. I mean, I guess you could argue that maybe Mike Yastrzemski is perhaps an odd man out. Ramos has performed better than him, but Yastrzemski has played a lot more, and Yastrzemski's been hot lately, and all the way to the point where he's reached about league average offensive production, and in his major league career, he's been 13% better than league average, and plus he gives you good defense in right field. But I'm getting there. And with Matos, I wouldn't touch the guy. And that's the thing, is Jung-Hoo Lee is out for the season, very sadly, but true. And so that's going to give one of those two outfielders the runway to be an everyday player for the rest of the season. And I think that guy is going to be Matos, and Farhan Zaidi even said as much before Matos went on this unbelievable tear that he went on against the Rockies. And so, yeah, thankfully, I mean, in a way, thankfully, none of these guys are ready to return immediately. We had an update on May 17th, which is not that long ago, and medical update, and here are the key guys that were mentioned in this mailbag question. Nick Ahmed, the update was that he's continuing light baseball activity, and so that's not okay, he's ready to come back tomorrow. Light baseball activity. And for Conforto, they said on May 17th, Friday, that he has started light baseball activities, including throwing and hitting in the cage. He'll start his running progression on Saturday. And with Austin Slater, who's on the concussion IL, they said he'll start baseball activity, including playing catch and light running. He'll start his hitting progression this weekend. And so none of these guys are immediately on the cusp of returning. And so each and every day is an important day for guys like Matos, Ramos, and Luciano. More importantly, I think Ramos and Luciano, and specifically Ramos, because you got two outfielders on their way back, and you just basically have to keep performing, because that's the thing, is you can't send Conforto or Slater to the minors. You can send Ramos to the minors, and so otherwise you don't want to trade from a position of feeling like you have to make a trade, right? And so but if Ramos is just tearing the cover off the ball and looking like a major league regular, then yeah, you do consider making a move. And we've seen a lot Not a lot, but we've seen really impressive stuff out of all of these guys in a short period of time. So I don't know. And then the Tom Murphy question, he just got put on the 60-day IL. So we're a ways away from, but they signed him to a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year option. And so, yeah, he would be that. I know he didn't play well when he was here to start the season, but they're going to continue to give Murphy that role. And I don't know exactly what it would mean about Casali, but we have like a couple months to kind of evaluate that and see where they're at in a couple months. For all we know, they lose another catcher or whatever, and so we'll kick that can down the road and address it later. So anyway, coming up in just a minute, more questions and answers. We are going to get to a question about when is Patrick Bailey coming back and who are going to be the Giants All-Stars this year and much more. So we'll get into all of that momentarily, and before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Are you struggling to close deals? B2B selling is tougher than ever, and that's why I want to tell you about LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers, drive higher revenue, and increase sales performance. Sales Navigator helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals such as job changes or which accounts you should prioritize, and shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to convert. Fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform, Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date first-party data, enabling you to unlock conversations with the people that matter. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/lockedon for a free 60-day trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedon to get started. All right, as promised, we are going to get some more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we are going to be getting into Game 1 of this series in Pittsburgh between the Giants and the Pirates, and it's going to be Martin Perez against Logan Webb. And so, there's some tougher matchups in the second and third game of this series, and so this is a big one for the Giants to try to get with Webb and his 3.03 ERA versus Martin Perez and his ERA up near 5. And so this is one, if you don't win this one, that's trouble for the rest of the series. It's baseball is crazy and you never know what's going to happen. But this is one where you have the advantage and you got to take advantage of that. So also, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And just a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So anyway, more questions and answers. Like I said, the next one coming from Praying for Runs. Thank you for your prayer for runs. It's working over the last weekend or so. And the question is, when's Patrick coming back? And so I'm scanning the lineup right now. He's not in the lineup, but we did have a tweet earlier from Susan Slusser today that said Dr. Mickey Collins, one of the top concussion experts in the country, saw Patrick Bailey this morning, today, Tuesday, and cleared him to play. No roster move yet, but suspect there would be if that's the case. And so I'm going to scroll basically through Twitter. Giants, by the way, they did activate Ryan McKenna, who they claimed off waivers from the Orioles. They had an open 40-man spot. Was it when they put Tom Murphy on the 60-day IL? They've made so many roster moves recently. Oh, and there's more medical updates that I'll have to update you on. But Bailey Slusser says Bailey will be added to the roster today, it sounds like, but won't be in the lineup. Nothing announced yet. So I would imagine, Casale is the starting catcher tonight, and so that I would imagine that the corresponding move would be optioning Blake Sable. Just another example of optionality being king here. So when's Bailey coming back? Probably tomorrow or like soon, and that's great news because, Bailey is arguably their best position player. We'll see how it plays out with guys like, Matos and Luciano and Ramos and all that. But Bailey, when he's right, is just a really impact player on both sides of the ball. Well, we'll see about the bat, but certainly with the glove, and he was hitting this year. And so, yeah, I would expect him back soon. That's great that he got cleared by the top concussion specialist, one of the top concussion specialists in the country. So I just want to update you on those injuries because the Giants just sent this out since I started recording, essentially. And what they say about Nick Ahmed is that he remains in San Francisco to rehab. He's progressing with strengthening exercises and will continue light baseball activity this week. So again, not close to returning. Conforto is currently with the team in Pittsburgh. He started on-field batting practice and will ramp up his running this week. So again, not super close to returning. Slater is still in concussion protocol. He'll increase baseball activity starting today, Tuesday, including hitting, throwing, and running. So that sounds like probably the closest to coming back, but still not super immediately close. And you can always buy time, send them on a rehab assignment, in that way to kind of continue to get playing time for someone like Ramos and see, does this guy is he really forcing the issue where he needs to be on the major league roster and you can't send him down. So every game is kind of crucial in that way and is a big evaluation opportunity for the front office and a big opportunity in general for the player. So the next question says, who will be the Giants All-Stars this year? So that's a good question. I hadn't really thought about that yet. Last year, we were looking at Lamont Wade Jr. and J.D. Davis on the position player side as guys who looked like they deserved to be there, but they did start to cool off in mid-June or so, and neither of them made the All-Star team. Wade Jr., there's definitely a case to be made. He's if you set the minimums to whatever is his total plate appearance number, which right now is 146, and everyday players like Matt Chapman or whatever have 196. So it's not like he's played way fewer. It's not like he has way fewer plate appearances than guys who are in there pretty much every day. But Lamont Wade Jr. has a 466 on base percentage and a 20.5% walk rate. I would venture to guess that those are both leading the major leagues still. We checked on it a couple of weeks ago, and he was leading the major leagues in both of those categories when we lowered the minimum because he sometimes gets pinch hit for. He sometimes doesn't start against a left-handed pitcher. But nevertheless, he deserves consideration, and I think Bailey would too if he hadn't missed so much time. Bailey's only played 26 games versus 47 for guys like Chapman and Tyro Estrada. But on the pitching side, I think that this is the year. Logan Webb has never made an all-star team, which is just criminal. He's been great since 2021, one of the best pitchers in the game, and he's never made an all-star team. And so I think Logan Webb, this will be the year where he finally gets recognized, hopefully. If he doesn't, it's going to make me irritated like no other, and I'll come on this show and complain about it. I think Jordan Hicks deserves consideration at this point. He's got a 2.38 ERA in 53 innings and making that conversion from reliever to starter. So Jordan Hicks in that mix, and you can never count out a guy like Camilo Doval, who's doing what Camilo Doval does. The walk rate has been high, but overall he's still got a 3 ERA. He's going to rack up a bunch of saves. So far he's been perfect. I think 8 for 8 in save opportunities and striking out batters, and I just expect him to continue to be good. So those are kind of the guys, and then we'll see if Matos just goes on a tear from now until July, then he could be an all-star, but that is very much remains to be seen. But right now, those are I think Webb, I want to call him a lock, but he should have been a lock in other years and hasn't made it yet in his career, which is just crazy. If he played for the Yankees, he would have been on 4 already. But he plays for the Giants, so he's been on none. And yeah, Hicks and Doval. I think Ryan Walker deserves consideration, but it's hard to squeeze, relievers, especially non-closers, onto that roster. And Lamont Wade Jr., Patrick Bailey, Luis Matos. These are guys to watch, but I'll go with Webb, Hicks, and Doval, something like that. I think Hicks's story will kind of stand out and earn him consideration if he keeps this up. So coming up in just a minute, more questions and answers. We're going to get into Randy Rodriguez, who I don't think I even have mentioned on this show, whether he's a mainstay. Randy Rodriguez out of the bullpen. When he got called up, there was a lot else going on, and we never even discussed it. But what has he done? Is he a mainstay? And then also, what about this kind of 5th starter spot with Keaton Wynn hurt and Mason Black struggling? What are they going to do there? So we'll get into all of that momentarily, and before we do, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. Obviously the Giants and all their players. You can just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. One of the best things about Prize Picks, I have to tell you, is that it's available in the great state of California. So you can play this game. I've got it pulled up right here on my phone, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube, and you'll just have to believe me if you're not watching on YouTube. But these are some of the things I'm looking at. You can see them on YouTube. I've got, for today, with the Giants at Pittsburgh, I'm taking more on 0.5 hits for Luis Matos. I think with a lefty on the mound and the way he's swinging the bat and the way he doesn't strike out, just like put the ball in play and you're going to get a hit like 30% of the time. And he puts the ball in play like every time. And so give him several at-bats and that's a good chance to get a hit. So I'm taking over on 0.5 hits and then more on 0.5 hits and more on 3.5 strikeouts for Logan Webb. So that's kind of the safer route, and you can also take more on 2.5 hits plus runs plus RBIs for Tyro Estrada. I think that's one I'm considering as well. And that with those 3, there's a payout of pay $20, win 64. And if you take out the Tyro Estrada one, it's pay $20, win 30. And so that's why I was throwing in that third one, which I think is a decent chance to hit as well. So anyway, download the app today and use code lowercase LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, as promised, we are going to get to more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, we're going to be breaking down this game. It's a big one. Logan Webb versus Martin Perez. And why I say it's big is because the Giants are coming off this winning. They're winning ways. They're hitting all of a sudden, and you've got a big pitching advantage here. I'm just going to make sure the weather is supposed to be playable in Pittsburgh. Yeah, no rain in the forecast for this whole series, just sunshine and heat. So good weather. It's going to be like 80 around first pitch there, like each of the 3 days, and so that's good. And then let's see in New York, where Queens, we'll see what the weather's like where the Giants are going afterwards. Sunshine and hot in the 90s. So the Giants, this is going to be a hot, sunny trip, but no rain delays. Wait, I think I accidentally was looking at Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Let me amend that. Not 90 in Queens, but still sun and like 80-ish. Highs around 80. So looks like no rain delays for this trip, which is always nice. But yeah. Also want to remind you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. And a reminder about Postcast with Eric Engel. After every Giants game, and 49ers and Warriors when they're in season, you can hop on Locked On Sports San Francisco on YouTube. So check it out right now if you haven't already, and subscribe, hit the bell notification. And right after the game, Eric Engel goes live and does instant reaction, and you can join in on that conversation there. Locked On Sports San Francisco, and then that postcast feed also goes onto the Locked On Giants podcast feed everywhere but the YouTube channel. And so if you see it, if you haven't seen it yet, you will if you're gonna follow this show, which you should. But it'll say postcast, so that won't be me. That'll be Eric Engel, but it's just an added thing we're giving to you, the listeners. So I hope you enjoy that. Anyway, continuing on with the questions. Juan says, Randy Rodriguez, a mainstay or back to Sacramento? So currently, if we look at the bullpen and we look at, some other guys. Oh, here, Blake Snell is going to start on the 22nd, I'm seeing. So that's great. Blake Snell's coming back too. So someone will have to go. And, Mason Black is currently still on the Major League roster. And so that's one of the questions that's coming up later. But yeah, I mean, when I look at, I think Nick Avila is more of a candidate to get sent down than Randy Rodriguez. And so Randy Rodriguez, let's look at the numbers, putting up, quietly extremely impressive numbers. And he's been an innings eater in 4 games. When I say innings eater, I mean he's multiple inning reliever. 4 games, 8 2/3 innings, strikeout rate of 29.3%, walk rate very much under control at 7.3%, and has allowed, the ERA is 3.12. The expected ERA based on quality of contact, strikeout rate, walk rate, stuff like that, 2.34. Fielding independent pitching, 1.42. So he's just been really good. And you look at a guy like Nick Avila, and so far this season, Nick Avila has pitched a similar number of innings. And honestly, the overall, peripheral numbers, like the strikeouts, the walks, the home runs have been good, but the ERA is 9.31. So I don't know how you would justify keeping him on the roster over Randy Rodriguez. And plus, Snell coming back, they've got 5 starters and 4, 8, 9. They've got 14 pitchers right now, I think. 9, 12, 10, 11, 12, 13. No, it's 13 and 13. So, because Snell's not on the roster. So once Snell's on the roster, that would be too many pitchers. So yeah, I would expect that they would send a pitcher down, and you can't send down Sean Jelly. The only pitchers with options are Camilo Doval, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Walker. None of those guys are getting sent down. And then the guys who could be sent down, Eric Miller, Sean Jelly, Nick Avila, Randy Rodriguez. And I think Avila is the first to go. And then after that, it becomes a tough choice. Sean Jelly has quietly been amazing as well. 11 games, 17 innings, walk rate of 1.5%, even 1.4% to be exact. Ground ball rate of 65%, strikeout rate a little better than league average. ERA 2.65, expected ERA 2.87. So Sean Jelly quietly having kind of a breakout season right now out of the pen. It is 11 games, it is 17 innings, but we can see it with our eyes. He goes out there and he's got some kind of wipeout stuff and then is keeping the ball on the ground. So that's good to see. And I mean, Randy Rodriguez, it's maybe too early to call him a mainstay just because it's been 4 games, but he has a chance to establish himself as a mainstay. And this is his last option year. They've used all 3 of his option years already. And so they want to evaluate this guy. And Avila has 3 option years. And so I think very possibly a mainstay. So the next question from Casey Schmidt Enjoyer, who says, with Keaton Wynn hurt and Mason Black struggling, do you think we see Carson Whisenhunt or another AAA starter get a shot before Cobb and Ray come back? So that's a big question, especially with the uncertainty around Blake Snell. I mean, he's been hurt and he was ineffective, and so you can't take anything for granted. But even with Snell, you do have like that currently that Mason Black spot in the rotation, along with a young player in Kyle Harrison and a guy who has never thrown a lot of innings in Jordan Hicks. And so what are they going to do with that extra spot that's currently going to Mason Black? I think you're like we already saw, Keaton Wynn had that spot, but he's hurt. And then Mason Black, if he struggles, you can't just keep throwing him out there. And so when I look at, okay, who are the pitchers who are options? Yeah, like Carson Whisenhunt, he's not on the 40-man roster. That hurts his chances, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, I look at Double-A. I'm looking at Hayden Birdsong. I haven't really checked in on the numbers for these guys. Carson Whisenhunt, I know, like, he's striking out a ton of batters, but he's suddenly, like, since going to Double-A last year, he started walking too many guys. So the walk rate is, like, too high, but they've shown an ability to kind of have guys improve at the major league level. I think you definitely could see at some point, if Mason Black just keeps struggling, that they perhaps go to a Carson Whisenhunt. Strikeout rate really intrigues me. It's 33.1% there in Sacramento. And it's a tough place to pitch, Sacramento. So that is worth pointing out. Hayden Birdsong has also done pretty well. I mean, the walk rate is the one thing that stands out as a negative for Birdsong, and it for him also started last year. Like he's kind of always been a little bit erratic, but yeah. So I definitely think it's possible, but probably in the meantime we'll keep seeing Mason Black. But if he keeps struggling, then they are going to have to turn to somebody else and somebody young. They don't like having to make a 40-man move though, but sometimes what has to be done, and they do it anyway out of necessity. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow, breaking down Game 1 of the series. No rain delays, so we will be breaking it down. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Hopefully the Giants can keep this thing going, get to one game under 500 potentially with a win. They've got a big advantage here, and yeah, can't wait to be with you again tomorrow, like I said. So thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.